Duh, duh, duh.
Dun-dun-dun-dun. Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone to our inaugural NAIDOC week chat. Um, Yay! We are so excited to have the superstar Nardi Simpson joining myself and Lamorna Nightingale to just have a chat about Aboriginal culture and music and what it means to all of us right now. Welcome, Nardi,
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody.
and welcome to your amazing new haircut.
Yeah,
Where did,
I was
wow.
old.
It makes you look so young. Not that you looked old before, but really it does.
Well, my niece, who is 10, is very creative. She's sort of like the person I really want to be. I've told her this. It's no secret. And she got the most amazing, she's very creative anyway, and she's her own person. She got a mad haircut, and I thought, I'm doing that. And it
Oh,
took
you
me,
copied your niece. That's
I copied my
awesome.
niece, but it took me 2 months to get the courage up to do it. And so I don't know how she'll feel about it. Anyway, it's done.
Is it the same as hers?
Um, yes, she had very short underneath, and but her hair is much more thick and beautiful and curly, and so she styles. Sometimes she goes up, sometimes she does side. I'm just a one. I'm get out of bed and rub. That's as
Yeah,
far as I go. So
yeah,
it will work for a little while.
me too.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we should start by sort of um, bring officially welcoming you into the Ensemble Offspring for next year's 2021 First Nations Composer in Residence position. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Excited.
Funnily enough, I actually got a call from Brenda Gifford this morning. We got cut off, unfortunately, so we have to finish the conversation. But I'm pretty sure she was calling to thank me and Ensemble Offspring for the experience this year. And I thought that was so nice of her to think to just call to say thanks and have a little chat. So
Mm,
that was very lovely.
yeah, beautiful. Well, that's sort of what NAIDOC's about, eh? It's about
Mm.
those coming together, led by culture coming together. So of course she would do that. It's perfect.
Oh,
Oh,
beautiful.
right, that's nice.
Speaking of which, you mentioned that just then. So, what does NAIDOC Week mean to you?
For me, how did it start? So I mean, in my mind's eye, I'm thinking when I was in primary school, it was a very new thing.
Mm.
Actually, not primary school, high school. Didn't have it in primary school, or a concept of what this sort of time was. And so I grew up through the period of culture becoming something that wasn't just what we did with our families, but the way that we um, celebrated with the wider community. So NAIDOC for me has been family and small. And then as I started to performing for um, whole lots of different community organisations and celebrating the things that they do and how they connect to their communities. And now it's sort of moved into this, especially, with all these sort of very topical things like change the date and Black Lives Matter and things like that, that it's become a galvanising time for non-Indigenous
Mm.
people to really get behind and support Blackfellas doing business their ways. And it's been a lovely evolving journey on who's involved and how you do it and what it looks like, so that now we're sort of at this place, especially this year, COVID-19, where we're searching for ways to be closer to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Is there, do you feel like there's been a marked change in the kind of general awareness around and importance of really valuing and respecting and learning more about Aboriginal culture in the last sort of 5 years in Australia? Or do you think, is that just me putting my own personal perception onto it and that's not really the case? Has it been more gradual than that for you?
Well, from where I sit, and I mean, like I'm an inner city Sydney person, And so, and the people that I mix with are people who are interested in these things and active in those areas. So in that kind of narrow view, over the last 5 years, I've seen the kind of consolidation of not just an awareness of Aboriginal culture, but then a kind of what's the word, like a really getting into ways to understand, how do I put it, the way culture works, instead of culture being this beautiful spiritual thing that we kind of all share because we're born in Australia, and a general awareness of this other peoples. In the last 5 years, it's been an interaction with different ways of working within that difference. That's what I've seen, that people are not just doing welcomes to country, but I'm trying to, or acknowledgements of country, but trying to insert themselves in a relationship with people and place. Trying to use things like Aboriginal or Indigenous knowledge to find a way to understand who they are. So that's really going deeper than just supporting. It's trying to find a way to be part of that and add to it in an appropriate way. That's what's happened in the last 5 years, I reckon, if that makes sense.
Like us whiteys have started to go, actually, we could just learn so much from your culture, and it's not just a one-way kind of, not a charity thing, but it feels like we're actually the ones who are gaining a whole heap, which is amazing.
Yeah, well, that's really beautiful from our point of view, because it's not just something people feel that they should do, or it's not actually just about knowledge. That's what I'm trying to say. It took me half an hour, but I got there. It's not just about knowing more. Now, I think it's about really interesting ways to find where we can do more together, which is what I understand, your First Nations artists in residencies. It's working together in different ways to create a new.
Yeah.
And that's happening.
I feel like, if I'm completely honest, for me, say 10 years ago, it always felt like the barrier was, how do I meet these people? Like, how do I make that connection into the community? Like, it's not my place to just kind of go and start talking to people. How do I do that? And that's where I feel like we've been particularly blessed by Chris Sainsbury sort of bringing us into the fore with Nara Borea, because for us, of course, that's been just a really unique opportunity to meet people like you and Brenda and, well, everyone, Eric, and who, if I think about 10 years before, I knew William Barton and that's it. And it's pretty limiting if you only know one musical black fella, So that's been an amazing change for us. And I guess that's probably the biggest thing that I would say to people, like, find your community and really get to know people for who they are, because it's about that, more than anything.
Yeah. And what I kind of see in my third eye when you're talking, Claire, is that being invited is very different to searching for something.
Yeah.
And actually being in a space where you don't need anything is really important in cross-cultural stuff, because a lot of people with especially creative projects, they say, right, I've got this great idea and I want some Aboriginal thing to do this, and then you go looking for it, but that may not necessarily be what blackfellas are interested in. They might, and actually that may not be what your value is to Aboriginal people. If you're, a deadly flautist and you go in with an idea of creating this piece and having this person do that and this person do that, I'm sure that the flip side to that conversation would be maybe some Aboriginal artist or whatever, dancer, composer, whatever, has a concept that has come from them that they could use a flautist for. So you see the different ways, the way a relationship starts is really important, I think, with blackfellas. And where concepts start for creative things is really important to how Aboriginal culture and knowledge is placed. If somebody's asking that of you, it's not as empowering as if you're going to someone saying, hey, let's do this together.
Yeah.
Totally.
And do you feel like in a situation like with Narrabri that it actually is a space for just having that conversation about sharing music, or what? Yeah.
For me, I sort of thought I go into a really supportive experience with a whole lot of relationships that have happened before I've even been there, that are working well with blackfellas and whitefellas. And for me, Narrabri was me going in to learn in a safe, supportive environment. It was not really until, I mean, I've sort of, I feel like I've graduated. I've finished there now, I've done my two.
Yeah.
That I'm able to use the skills and knowledge and things that I've picked up to then take that next small step, which is a big step, in experimenting with that. So Narrabri to me is a beautiful, supportive, learning relationship where it's that's what it is, and then you can take the next step and then put that to use in your own way. That's the challenging thing, but we've all been supported to do that when we leave through the relationships that we've made while we're there.
For I actually honestly feel that we benefit more from it than you guys, because because you're all like insanely amazing musicians, and if you think about the way we normally work with composers, especially emerging younger composers or less established composers, it's often sort of set up as a one-way stream that we're servicing them and they're getting stuff out of our experience. And of course you always learn from everyone, so as people you learn from them, and it is never actually a one-way stream. But I feel like with this project, slowly it becomes very clear to me that we are benefiting the most because our opportunity for learning through the awkward moments, and through those times that we think, we realize, oh God, shouldn't have said that, shouldn't have done that. They're things that we have grown up not being aware of. So in a way we can't help it, but this is the only way that we're really genuinely going to learn and going to understand how to interact in a meaningful way with this important and amazing culture that we live amongst,
Well, I mean, I think that shows that we're all at the same, not take away music, we're all at the same learning level. You know what I mean? So the expertise you fellas have in music is the expertise we have in culture, and those are the things that we're interacting in. And the scores and the work is sort of the beautiful, it's not the added extra, but the expression of that learning space, maybe.
And just on that, I remember recently Brenda Gifford actually said we were having a RAP meeting, which is our Reconciliation Action Plan, and Brenda was involved in that meeting, and she said, I said, I used to be worried about asking dumb questions, and now I just know to ask, because how else am I going to learn? And she said, well, it's like us with musical terminology. Like, we feel a bit dumb in the beginning, and now we know just to ask too. And I sort of thought that is a nice analogy for what it is, in a way that, of course, we don't think they're dumb questions when you say, well, what does writ mean? But on the flip side, you feel like a bit of an idiot if you don't know why a smoking ceremony happens, but you just have to ask the question, otherwise you're never going to learn.
Yeah, and that's very dependent on what the environment is. If people are safe to on both sides to ask those things, then you're in the right place. It doesn't matter what you do and don't know, you're in the same place together.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting.
So, Nardi, what do you think will come out of like what's next for your musical journey, apart from being our First Nations resident composer? What are you kind of feeling like is going to come of all this experimentation that this amazing experimentation that you've been doing with us?
I wish I knew. I'm sort of the person. I love to live my life. You know, I don't make plans. Maybe that's a way of saying I'm disorganized. I don't know. But I love to have a life where things are able to come and go in front of me and I can chase them. You know what I mean? So in turn, I'm very unused to planning what any sort of creative future will hold. I almost like the fact that if I keep walking, paths will appear. So in terms of music making, I mean, I can tell you when Chris rang me, I remember I was in Dimmicks at Broadway, when he asked me if I wanted to be involved in this 2 years ago. And I was that close to chucking in music altogether because I thought I'd gone as far as I could with a guitar and a folk song. I would just be doing the same thing over and over. And even though I really love performing, I wondered if I had any more to explore. I'd hit my ceiling, I think. And I was about to give it up. So if you would have asked me that 2 years ago, I would have said, "Nah, I'm gonna follow this path and do something different." So
You've written a book.
yeah. Well, that was part of me waving goodbye to music, really. That's what I thought I was doing when I wrote that thing. But stupid me, I realized they're actually more related than you could ever think. In terms of creating composed music, I don't know. I don't have a plan for that. I can just, if people are interested, they'll find me. And if not, I'll still I love learning, so I'll still keep experimenting with sound, really. But I should have thought about that before we had this.
No. Hey, I'm interested, Nardi. How long did it take you to write this amazing book what is it in its third pressing now, did you say?
Yeah, that's
on gangbusters.
Going well. I mean, I had no clue about what would happen with that, but I had been, I reckon, messing around for 3 years, just writing things, not writing, just writing ideas. And I would have spent maybe 6 months putting it together in some sort of, I had 6 chapters, I think, the beginning of 2008. And then for my birthday, my mum bought me a year of the novel course at Writing New South Wales. And that was the first course I ever finished in its entirety in my adult life. I've always done something and, petered out. And that's the first thing that I finished. And it was a year of structuring and organising and engaging with your text. And at the end of that, I had a really beautiful, it was a big class, 20 odd people, beautiful teacher there, Emily Maguire, and she sort of tells you where you need to go next. And she said, put it in for a black and white fellowship and you will get feedback. So it's a win-win, you don't need to win that thing. You will get feedback from publishers. And I was lucky enough to win that. And so then I spent a year with Deadly Black Editors, 2019, getting the manuscript up, and then they passed it on to a publisher, and that was another 6 months of editing with a publisher. So to me, it felt like it all happened really quickly. But the ideas were in and around the ether for many a year. But the kind of, when I knew what I was doing, when I woke up and knew where I needed to go with it, wasn't really a matter of 18 months, I reckon.
Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah. Is it your first novel then?
Yeah.
Yeah. And is it based on real life experiences?
No, not well. My dad was born in Walgett. He's one of 11. They lived out on the river in Walgett, and they talk about this time where they lived. There was about 6 or 7 families out along, not in town actually. When I say along the river, I mean not in town, not allowed in town. similar to the book. There's a place called the Campgrounds, and that those blackfellas kept out of reach of town. And that was sort of his story. And they talk about this time where, we've got a picture of their old house that they used to live in. It's all, scraps of tin and hessian and all that stuff. But when they talk about it, they talk as if it was the golden years. All of them, the 11 of them. They talk about this time when they actually had nothing as the time when they had everything that they needed. And so I wanted to understand that. And that's why I wanted to time travel. And so I wrote that place down so I could walk inside of it. That was the kind of the impetus for the Campgrounds, which is in the book. Everything else is sort of sprung from that wish to try and time travel. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So Nardi, the other day you were talking about how like music and your writing and all of your Aboriginal culture all feels very connected to you. I wonder whether you could tell us a bit more about that.
I reckon, Lamorna, it's got something to do with the fact that, where someone might call themselves a composer or a musician or an author, in a blackfella way, we would say we're storytellers. So, and the difference is to me that storytellers bring people together, whereas I'm wondering whether a composer sort of orders their world around that singular thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's sort of, it's implying a structure that I think is a little bit different with us. And the way music and culture and words work, for me anyway, is that they're all story. It's all, we need, you can see it in a lot of people who do Narrabri. Look at Eric, he plays music and he moves and he writes and he's a poet. All these different dimensions of storytelling end up being related into a singular thing. And so image and sound and word and sharing and all that is basically the same thing to us. And actually you need more than one element to do it well, if you know what I mean. So this is why, a lot of Chris, the last time I had a yarn to Chris and I was telling him about that bird piece that you fellas recorded last week. And he said, what's it about? And I reckon 40 minutes later I'd finished talking. I knew I just needed to stop, but I couldn't, and then there was this thing I had to tell, and that was related to the next thing, like I'm doing now, see? And he said, you don't need to tell everyone all of that. And this is the thing that answers your question, but it gets in the way of, or it shows you how expansive story is.
But I reckon, I disagree with Chris. I mean, I understand why he said that, but I think you do need to tell everyone everything. And I think actually that's where half the issue lies, that a lot of the way we relate is on our terms, which is fast and furious and speedy and let's get it done and let's get to the next thing. And that's not how Aboriginal culture is. And so I think actually we need to learn how to slow down to that way, or at least find a middle ground, rather than making everyone do everything our way. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And actually, I think that even a lot of Western culture people feel very, I think part of the problem with classical music is that it is one-dimensional. And if you can't, well, it's not really one-dimensional, but I think for a lot of people, they see it as being one-dimensional because they don't get the story or they don't understand the background to it. And if there was more story and if there was more time, then maybe we would connect with more people. And
yeah, my dad, he's a good, and he when I was younger, and I say, hey, Dad, how come, well, how's that fella, blah blah blah, or what's that place, or that thing, when I was always asking questions, wanting an answer about a piece of information I didn't have. And he would always, he still does, say to me, you don't need to know that. And I would get so pissed off. Oh, gee, I'd get so wild with him. You don't need to know. You know, imagine having that. But the problem was I was hearing him say, you don't deserve to know that. But what he was actually saying was, let that bit of info sit over there with that person. And let that bit of info sit over there with that one. And that person over there will look after that. And so when I understood that, I saw that I was in a landscape of knowledge that was held by different people. And I was important because there was knowledge that I held that would be of use to somebody. So this is the thing when it comes to sharing stories. And what Chris was sort of telling me, I think, was that, and also talking about time and a relationship over time needs to build. So if I tell you, well, not me, if I'm told everything, where do I go after that? You know what I mean? So there's these different, there's lots of different ways to interact with those things. And I think what Chris was sort of telling me was partly because, you know, at that moment, that piece meant that thing to me. It may mean something in a different context, and all those different things go into the body of knowledge that makes up that piece. And actually all the people that are engaged in that piece at that time are part of that, like Dad was saying, let that sit over there and let that belong to that place. So I have been a victim of wanting to know everything when I wanted to know it. But as I'm getting older, I'm starting to see not only do I not need to provide that, I'm not talking to you guys, but outside, I don't need to answer everything, but I also need to allow, it's like a breath, I need to allow stories and knowledge to have their own breath and life. That's a concept I'm trying to work out how to interact with in my creative life. Yeah.
Wow. Are both your parents Aboriginal?
No, my dad's Yuwaalaraay. My mum was born in Coogee. And they met in the 70s. Mum did a teaching degree and she got stationed out to Walgett Central School, Walgett High School it was called then. And that's where they met up there. 70s, yeah. So I've always lived in Sydney, but we go up and back all the time. And our family moved from, were in Walgett all the time, all the brothers and sisters, and then they've sort of scattered out to different parts of New South Wales. So it's great. There's a Simpson everywhere you go.
Yeah, and it's a very creative family too, isn't it?
We're sort of entertainers. We're soft-hearted entertainers, and we're quite competitive. I mean, we look like softies on the outside, but don't take the microphone off me. We've got a bit of killer instinct in there, but and Mum's family too were very musical. But they all played an instrument, and her eldest sister was a music teacher in Mittagong for years, still teaches there. So that's been really lovely to have, through what I do with you guys, those different ways of interacting with sound coming together. It's been really beautiful.
Yeah, wow. Speaking of the piece that you wrote for us for the ABC Fresh Start grant thingy, which we just recorded, it's called Of Stars and Birds. Yeah. And you did tell us a beautiful story. You don't have to tell the 40-minute version that you told Chris. But you could, I would love you to tell the story of what that's about, especially about the, burial rituals of being in the trees and what that means in your culture. And I don't know, it was just beautiful. Yeah.
And I reckon, the reason why it took me 40 minutes when I was telling Chris was because I was still, usually when I write something big cultural, I know exactly where I want to go. I am in control of the story, and that was my mistake there, because I'm not in control of these things. But the original sort of, not a brief, a nicer word than brief, was to write something for your birdsong collection, that had to do with birds. And I thought, well, I don't know how to do all these dots, you know. What's going to be interesting and different that I can bring that maybe other people can't? And it was sort of a way to understand birds as we've got the story that the piece was based on. Essentially, it's about how the Southern Cross came to be, and you know, there's some business on the ground that happened that meant that the first death came to Yuwaalaraay country, and the person who broke the law by killing animals instead of eating plants, died a very sort of sad death, and then was put in a tree, and the tree ascended up into the sky, and became a star. And the birds, the cockatoo and the wedge-tailed eagle, are the two pointers of the Southern Cross that are chasing after the trees that moved up. And so when I started writing that piece, it was, cockatoo and star. That's different, you know, that'll set this thing apart, or that'll give it a bit of depth that maybe my musical ability needs supporting. But then as I realised that the story isn't really about that, I kind of got into this really difficult writing period because I think I didn't understand what I was working with. That was my mistake. But it was a process for me to, I found it very hard to write that piece because I'd written a lot before then, and I think, you know, the year's been hard anyway, but I did a lot of stuff this year, and that was the last really important thing that I had to do, and it was very hard coming out. And I just happened to pick a story that I knew of, but I didn't actually know what I needed to know about it. But and then for me, listening to you guys on Friday when you were recording it, it was almost like I had to hear it to understand the things that I needed to know. So I find that really amazing, that here I was thinking, I'll do this piece on this cultural song, but I needed you guys, you three, to play notes for me to unlock important cultural knowledge that I needed to engage with. That actually happened. That's deadly.
Walked away from that recording session with new kind of a new understanding or new questions, or
I think I thought when I heard what you guys had done, it was almost like a ding, you need to go and think about that more, and ding, you need to go and make meaning for that thing, and ding, then you got to think about how you are going to use this material. So it was really more about it was an oral post-it note on all the things I had to learn in that story for me. That's what it was, if that makes sense.
Yeah, wow.
But I would never have known. I mean, I knew I wouldn't have done this as well as I thought, but I would never have thought I've got work to do unless I had heard those combinations of notes and space that you played at those moments. Yeah.
Can I just say as well, I mean, I know you're learning, and it's all, the realizations aren't just in relation to this element, but I think it's a really strong piece that you've come up with, like really succinct and not trying to do too much. And I think for that reason, it works really well. So I just wanted to congratulate you on that element.
Well, I think it was one of the better ones I did this year, especially because I thought it was a turkey. Anyway.
And I love listening to it on the ABC. I think we might be jumping into our cars and hearing it quite often.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, you've got to, that's what I've found even in folk music, you've got to leave space for other people. That's how they're going to connect to it. I mean, you know, so what, you write a piece. If there's not space for people to imagine or dream or daydream or drive or think about something within it, It's just going to be another piece of music that sort of, you know, you hear and washes over you. But hopefully, I know I will always associate that piece with me trying and failing and then realizing what it was I really need to think about more deeply. So it's of a time and place in itself anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Which leads me to think about the fact that we need to chat about what we're going to do together next year. And like you said, the creative percolation and direction really has to come from you. So you need to hit us up soon with your big dreams.
Yeah, great.
Whatever they are.
Yeah. Well, I know it's been hard to get around this year. I know, and you know, we all know, you guys more so than many, how difficult, you know, financial situations have been anyway. But I would love it. We've got a very special creation side out in Narran Lakes. Anyway, the book, my book, I dedicated to my Ngurumba, my homelands, and I think what I would love to do with you guys is to dedicate a whole lot of sound to that place and write things that are inspired by that. And I've got a cousin who's got a drone, so just want to get you out there and have you playing on the clay pans with a drone going over you and some beautiful music around, and I reckon that'll be
that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. And what area is it? Like, it's in...
It's in between, well, it's to the side of Walgett and Lightning Ridge. It's out there near the Opal Fields, Narran Lake Nature Reserve. It's
Wow.
Yeah, really important place for us. And there are lots of sites within there that I would love to go, and I'm going to go and spend time, and I would love to give I was going to say it wrong then. I was going to say give the gift of music, but I meant I would love to write music as a gift to those places, and I would love I'd love you guys to be involved in.
Awesome. You know, we've been to Brewarrina for the Bayami Nunu's festival, and we're going back next year. And we can't wait to go back, because that felt again like one of those sort of spiritual experiences, like swimming in the river there and playing by the river, and Lamorna swallowing a fly and while she was playing. But it feels also like we can go so much deeper. But the thing is, you can't rush this journey. You can't rush this process. Like, it's a slow burn, and we're on it now, and it's so awesome to just be part of this whole thing.
And everyone, that's the other wonderful thing, that everyone that you get involved in this will be different. I mean, you've seen how different we all are in Narrabri here anyway. But this sort of, when you have 10 years of First Nations, what is it called? What are they called? I forgot the word. Residencies. You're going to have 10 years of absolutely unique experience. And that lends itself into this big body of relationship that is something to be really excited about, you know. Everyone will look different.
Yeah. You know, one of the nicest things about the gig last Wednesday that I know you weren't able to come to, Nardi, but it was just so nice that all of the so many of the first of composers were there, and you know, we went and hung out with them a bit afterwards. Like, it was just so nice, like, to see Ryan and Elizabeth there, and it does feel like it's a kind of a family that's starting to grow, and we're starting to understand each other and feel a bit more comfortable with each other and talking more complicated things. And
well, I mean, those guys, they're sort of, to me, I mean, I've known them fellas for a long time, but they're in this Narrabri context, they're our heroes.
Yeah.
They've trailblazed this path that we get to follow, that actually has been created for, you know, you can see, looking at them, that they have created with friends a legacy for a lot of other Aboriginal people to say, yeah, I'm going to have a go at that.
Yeah.
So they are heroes, you know, just as Chris got everyone together in the first place to dream that stuff up. But because we have had careers parallel with each other, it's so doable because we know them. And
Yeah, that's what I find amazing, that because we often come in at the start of the year and we don't know a huge amount about all you guys, and it's kind of like gradually all falls into place. Oh, Marlene Cummins was a bloody Black Panther who was like a real mover and shaker in her time, and like totally has a movie about her. And then you from the Stiff Gins, and then of course, you know, Eric, I guess people know a bit more, and Ryan's career's gone gangbusters in the last few years. And so this gradual learning even about you guys and like your backgrounds and how diverse, amazing they are, but also the way they, as you say, they have intersected over the years. Like Elizabeth Shepherd said she went to Eora College with Marlene Cummins and they're in the same year. I thought that's awesome, you know.
And there's a beautiful thing too, Claire, that happens that, you know, we're sort of, you know, we've been playing for a long time, and probably all have got to the stage where I was saying, you know, similar to me, that we thought, you know, this is it really. And so Narraburi and these different ways of making music and thinking about music have almost given us this sort of boost that we didn't know we had in us. I mean, it's not, I'm sure that's not the case for everybody, but we have revived and refreshed with all this different way, you know, tenfold. And it's been beautiful to see, you know, people that you know really well. I'm trying to think of the right words. Be amazing again in a different way.
Yeah.
I can you blossoming or like
flourishing.
Yeah. And because I mean, you go back, this is something we, you know, how do you say it? My success relies on their success, and seeing, you know, Troy and Tim and Elizabeth being amazing makes me happy and strong in who I am.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, you know, Nardi, because when we were first approached by Chris Sainsbury to be involved, I remember kind of thinking, if I'm honest, I was thinking, who are we as musicians trained in, you know, Western art music, Western classical music, to even assume that you guys would want to write down dots on a page for us? Like why is it that you in a way have to sort of play our game of writing the dots down? And I guess the interesting thing for me has been this gradual realization that that's not really what it's about. It's about finding a sort of meeting place that is equal for both. So not you serving us, not us serving you. And I think, as you say, it's breathed this kind of lease of life into a lot of people's kind of careers as well. And there is a thirst at the moment. You know, we can't ignore the fact that there is a thirst at the moment by many cultural organisations around Australia to have more First Nations composers in their programming. But this is not going to just happen. I mean, it requires training, it requires time, it requires investment, it requires, you know, all the things, I guess, that we feel like we're really committed to. And it's been interesting to see this. It's quite, relatively speaking, a fast forwarded process for many of you. Like if you think that Brenda Gifford's been already commissioned by the Sydney Symphony Orchestra, and, you know, most emerging composers, even, you know, who've had a career in music in a way, aren't getting those opportunities. So I think it's amazing what we've sort of achieved together so far. But I guess I just wanted to say that that's my view, and to say, you know, how do you see it?
I think I was involved in a project very recently where First Nations, a lot of Narrabri mob actually, outside of the program were asked to interpret. It's not a harpsichord, but it's like a harpsichord. It's Australia's oldest piano for another ABC project. And I thought, what I want to do that for? Because that engagement to me didn't have what Narrabri has in that the engagement in Narrabri is for us all to learn. You know, we learn music stuff. You fellas might learn culture stuff, and where there is an equality in that. This other thing was like, here's this Western instrument that was made in 1770. What do you have to say about it? So the elements of that, and why the assumption that that would be interesting to us, and the kind of, what's the word, getting us involved in it, which was to interpret that instrument, is very different to what we do in Narrabri, what you fellas provide. So what I'm trying to say is the environment in which you're asked to create and which you're asked to place yourself in is very different. And sometimes, you know, commissions want culture. And then you've got to try and, you know, you've got to try and make that meaningful to you as a black fella, because culture isn't a thing you can deal out. You've got to try and negotiate those things. But in the way I understand Narrabri, it's not just about music. It's about, you know, your soul and spirit and our shared environment and all those, you know, all those bigger things. That there's a lot of there's value in those things as much as there is on the final piece that is delivered and played. So
how did you make the thing with the 1770 piano sort of relevant to you? I mean, you did it, right?
I did it. Well, why is this pissing me off so much? And I thought, don't walk away from that. You need to look at that. You need to look at that thing that, you know, and you need to sort of talk to that. And usually I'm not like that, you know. People ask me to do something, I'll do it. But I just sort of thought, this is not an equal thing. Doesn't feel equal anyway, blah, blah, blah. I just, I thought, how can I tried to approach that instrument as a way to create a landscape and a way for players to relate to each other. So it was about relationship and landscape and not about the instrument. That's how I approached it. And that was the piece that I sort of did.
And I think we're going to hear them on the ABC this week. I think they're launching them this week.
Yeah.
So people can listen out for that.
Yeah. And the other thing about that too, sorry to interrupt, is stupid me, another one, see, stupid. What I didn't realise was that all the other mob who were creating, my piece was in relationship to them, not to that instrument. So all the other composers framed it in different ways again, and that my piece sat alongside that. It didn't sit in opposition to Western art music or whatever.
Well, the final thing I just wanted to ask, I don't know if Lamorna, did you have any other questions?
It's very noisy. It might.
Okay.
So,
the back of your beautiful book, which I'm yet to read in its entirety, but I bought like 5 copies to give people for Christmas, as you saw. Also, Sand Talk. I bought like millions of copies of that book because I just love it so much. Okay, so the end of this like little blurb on the back, it says, full of music, Yuwaalaraay. How do you say that? Yuwaalaraay?
Yeah, that's it. Perfect.
I was getting lessons from Ali from Moogahlin the other day on how to pronounce all of the different language. Yeah, it was very, very informative. So full of music, the language and exquisite description. Your book is a lament to choice and change and the unyielding land that sustains us all, if only we could listen to it. So it starts by saying full of music and ends by saying we need to listen to the land. So firstly, how do you get music into words, and how do we listen to the land?
How do we get music into words? Words are music, and the body is the instrument. That's all it is. I mean, when I wrote it, I approached it as if it was a spoken thing, because the rhythm and the kind of texture even, and the range of voice is musical. And when you talk about lyrical things like land, it's a song. When you dream about, or when you yearn about things, it's song. It's song. So, and the way that I really lent on, even though I said I wanted to break away from music, I lent on musicality of story to get me to write a story. So, I mean, the actual book is about a very important song that needs to be sung to start again. But the song is in relationships, it's in the landscape, it's in the difficult things and also the beautiful things. It's just, that part wasn't hard. And how do you listen to the land? Well, we spoke about tempo, slowing down. Everybody does this. It's not a blackfella thing. Everyone's got some place that they just adore and they are drawn to and that they go to, and when they are there they have these beautiful languid moments that seem to last forever, that are like the golden years, like Dad's golden years. We all have a connection, a pull to place, and that is actually the land. I reckon that's that's the land talking to you. It's talking your language, which makes you want to be there. So it's not hard to listen to land. You just got to slow down a bit. And that's good for city people, because we need to make time to do that.
Absolutely.
When you slow down, you just hear so much. And you hear music in places you think you never would.
That's John Cage. Do you know much about John Cage?
No.
So John Cage is this American composer from sort of mid to late 20th century, was when he was active. He's no longer alive, but he's the guy who very famously wrote 4 minutes 33. It's that piece where you just sit there and nothing happens, and which I've performed. It's very awkward, but I think with us as musicians, and with Ensemble Offspring, really we got into Cage a lot about probably 10 years ago. We performed it a lot. And it's that thing of teaching us as musicians, but also our audiences, to just listen to the sounds around us and to stop and take it, because his music is not structured in a normal way. It's very aleatoric. So they kind of tend to be scores with a number, and you play a certain thing whenever you want in that number. So they're kind of like structured improvisations. And it's a beautiful realization, but also when you're working with children, with younger people, when you're teaching them music, just to listen to sounds and then in the world, and then everything becomes music. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's like the lawnmower at Lamorna's. Soundtrack to what we're doing now, like seriously, and it's of a time and a place, and it's moving around us as we talk about these things. And if you can find a place for things that you think don't even fit, the landscape or the scope or the whatever, the score just sort of expands.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a beautiful note to end on, don't you?
Yeah, we'll have to, next piece for lawnmower and Zoom.
Well, good idea, because actually Lamorna, my favorite ever performance of Lamorna's was this year on a sort of digital platform, and she performed The Garden Hose. It was amazing. Like, and I'm quite serious. I mean, my partner, who's not a musician, he thinks I'm a bit crazy that I loved it so much, but it really was beautiful. And they also performed on the exercise bike, didn't you?
Oh yeah,
The washing machine, or was it the dryer?
the dryer,
The dryer, yeah.
coffee machine.
Coffee machine.
The hose was actually, like you're saying, Nardi, like while we were doing that, like I just really got into this other zone with the hose going, and Jim had his saxophone out in the courtyard and he was making sounds with the hose. And yeah, it kind of took us to another place. It was really funny and beautiful.
Yeah, it really was.
And it probably would only have ever happened in 2020 under these circumstances. So it's reflecting, you know, the environment that we're in and how we relate to that, which is a very blackfella thing, you know. This goes to show culture doesn't discriminate, you know. The sort of the pillars of how culture works well is a universal thing.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much. I know you've been on like the book trail and you've been Mrs. like Media Land. Oh my God. So we feel very fortunate that you could agree to talk to us today.
Overexposed much? I'm sorry to everybody. My mum is the only one who watches everything anyway.
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, I'll send you all the money later. And we very much look forward to going to your country next year. That sounds awesome.
It will be great. But I mean,
Yeah.
thank you for everything that you guys do for all of us. And you know, we can sit around and talk about what NAIDOC is and what culture is, but you got to do it. And you're helping us show the best of all of us. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, well, thanks to everyone who's been listening in. Hopefully you've enjoyed today. And our next concert is on the 19th of November at the National Art School. It's called Ingles, and you can buy your tickets through the Ensemble Offspring brand new website. So thanks again, Nardi. Thanks, Lamorna. Have a good day, everyone.
Hi, Nardi.
Bye. Happy NAIDOC.
Bye.